evening and welcome to the rest of the news. Our special guest this evening is Michael Johnson from the Family Foundation. Michael,
thank you for having me.
Appreciate you being here. And he's going to give us a little update about what we can expect in Frankfort when the session begins, which is what, in January?
Yeah, January 5th.
January 5th. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand you're from Bardstown.
Yes, sir. Yeah, live there and enjoying the Kentucky life there, and really, it's a great little small town.
Well, were you born there, or did you move
No,
from somewhere?
I actually moved there from Southern California after completing law school in Virginia. Yeah.
Oh, so you have completed law school?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
You know, something that has been on my mind a lot is, when we went into this election, we were told the polls said that Jack Conway was about 6 points ahead. And then when the election was over, we found that Matt Bevin had won by considerable margin.
Right.
And so the question arises, what happened? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, it caught a lot of people by surprise. Especially the margin of victory that Bevin experienced. Jack Conway told the Courier-Journal that obviously they missed something bubbling under the surface, and Mr. Cross with the Courier-Journal, he wrote on the subject, and he felt that it was really religiously motivated conservatives, that kind of a local grown grassroots momentum that had built up partially in response to the issue with Kim Davis, the Rowan County clerk, and the other county clerks. And so that debate about religious liberty and same-sex marriage may have really influenced this election. So Mr. Cross also emphasized Bevin's closing slogan of "Vote your values, not your party." So that may have at least partially explained the historic election that we saw.
I'm sure there were a number of factors involved, but it was a big surprise to me. And I'm sure, like you say, a lot of other people. You know, there's an old song that says, God still moves in the hearts of his people. So, that's what kept going through my head. Like you say, it's like people came out and voted because they had convictions about what was going on. And it seems that was a major factor. It was, almost supernatural.
I think it's great when people can come out and vote their values and not just party line.
Yeah.
And so we saw a mixture. We got both Republicans and Democrats based on how people chose to vote. And some of those other races were very tight on some of the issues. And so it just shows the importance of being involved and the difference that can be made.
Someone told me that Denver Butler has switched parties from Democrat to Republican.
Yeah, that's true. He announced that he had switched his voter registration and that he would be running as a Republican in 2016. So that has definitely, on the heels of the historic election, has kind of, it's shifted Kentucky politics some, and I guess continues to show the difference that can be made when people get out there and vote their values and aren't just trapped by party lines and party leadership.
Right. Now, you mentioned before the program that there were a number of counties that went Republican that hadn't been Republican for many years.
Yeah, that's true. Matt Bevin won all but 14 of the 120 counties here in Kentucky, and that's how he became only the second Republican in the past 40 years, Republican governor. And so really to accomplish that, not only did he win that many counties, but he won the majority of votes, first governor in 24 years to win the majority of votes in over 100 counties. And to do that, he won 17 counties that hadn't voted Republican once in the past 40 years. So, something definitely happened that night.
I think there are a lot of Christian people in Kentucky that, hadn't really thought about their values. They just, pulled a party lever, and they just didn't realize that there's a right and a wrong, or a good and a bad, or a conservative and a liberal involved in the whole process. And I don't know. You think that's true?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to fall into the trap of party allegiance and to vote for a particular party instead of a particular candidate. And when we stop and we examine the individual candidates and the values they stand for, and we vote based on our values, then it can shift the status quo for sure.
Well, and the thing is, it seems to me probably in the past, people didn't really think about it that much. They just, like you say, go in, pull that party lever, and that was the end of it. But it seems like people were, like that song said, God still moves. It's like God was telling them, well, you need to think about this.
Yeah, and while the Kim Davis issue and that county clerk issue was rightly debated within Kentucky, and there are, differing opinions even among Christians and those of other faiths, they felt it was an important issue, that religious liberty needs to be protected. And so it's a matter of where that balance is, I think, is where the debate is centered. And unfortunately, I think voters were able to get a handle on, where candidates stood, and then they were able to apply that knowledge at the ballot box.
Right. Well, I found out that, not till just before the election, that Matt Bevin had some kind of board position at the Southern Seminary.
Yeah, I heard he was a donor there. I believe a building's named after, in memory of his daughter.
His daughter was
there in front of the seminary
in an automobile accident.
Yeah, so tragic. But I'm glad there's can be a lasting memory and tribute to her.
Yeah. Have you got some bills that have been pre-filed that might be coming up in Frankfort?
Yeah, so like we mentioned, the legislative session begins January 5th, and it's a longer session this year, so a 60-day session. It'll last until April 12th, so it gives legislators some more time to consider the issues, which is a good thing because as of December 1st, there are already 126 pre-filed bills, vying for their attention and their consideration. So they have a lot on their plates, and more bills will be filed, I'm sure. So of those 126, though, there were 6 or 7 that really stood out to me as ones that we need to keep an eye on, and people need to be aware of. And 4 of those touch on the issue of the religious liberty and the same-sex marriage issue, which we've talked about how that played a role in the election. And so those 4 were pre-filed in response to the incident with Kim Davis and her being jailed because Governor Beshear would not use the least restrictive means of carrying out the government
like he could have just taken her name off of those certificates, I guess.
Right, yes. And that's all she asked as far as her religious conscience. She didn't want her name placed on it.
Right.
And Kentucky law, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, requires that the government use the least restrictive means necessary. And so that's something that Bevin has promised will be his first executive order, will be to remove the county clerk's names from those clerks. But it wasn't until after Kim Davis was actually thrown in jail and spent, I believe it was 6 days in jail.
Wow. Yeah. The Jefferson County didn't go as one-sided Democrat as they usually do. And it just seems to me that there's a move going on to, as you were saying, a good way to put it probably is people are stopping and thinking, what does my values suggest for me to do rather than my grandfather's party or something like that. And but I think the Democrat vote in Jefferson County was 9% less than it was 4 years ago when the governors were running. So,
I mean, really people thinking through that, like you're saying, and looking at individual candidates instead of just party platforms is an important factor for legislators to consider as we move into legislative session, because many of them, the majority of them, will be up for re-election in 2016. We have our massive legislative elections as well as presidential elections.
Right. Wow, that's going to be really something. The Democrats have controlled the House of Representatives for many, many years, and they block a lot of bills, like the pro-life bills.
Yeah, and that's something that there are two pre-filed pieces of legislation dealing with pro-life issue. One would deal with safe haven for infants that after they're born, if they're unwanted or there's some issue to where the mother can't provide for the child, this bill would add churches to the list of places that the mother could drop the child off at
to get help.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then another piece of legislation that's pro-life would actually defund abortion providers here in the state of Kentucky.
That are getting taxpayers' money right now.
Taxpayer money.
Yeah. Now, I talked with Kevin Bratcher several months ago, and he said he was going to introduce that bill I think we mentioned before, where they were going to put the preamble of the Kentucky Constitution in the classrooms. Mm-hmm. And it's, I can't remember the exact word, but something that we're grateful to Almighty God for our state.
Those who drafted the Kentucky Constitution, like the American founding fathers, recognized that for our rights to mean something, they come from a higher power.
Right.
And that those rights and those liberties, both the religious and the governmental rights that we enjoy, come from that higher power.
Right.
And so it would be a great reminder for school children.
I guess it was about 1960 that the prayer was taken out of the schools. And it seems to me that was a turning point in our nation as far as getting away from God and traditional values. And so I think if they put God, the word God, in the classroom again, that it might have a significant effect. What do you think?
I think whenever you recognize that your rights aren't made by the government, that pre-exists the government, and the government is just ensured with the protection of those rights.
Yes.
You have to understand where those come from. As the American Declaration of Independence says, the laws of nature and nature's God. And so, it's a great reminder and something we do have to recognize.
Right. Any other bills? We're trying to get the bill passed to put prayer back in the Kentucky schools, but I don't guess that has been filed yet, but we hope to get that up.
Okay. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out for that. For sure.
Okay.
Keep people updated. But, with the same-sex marriage issue, religious liberty issue, there were 4 pre-filed bills. They all take a slightly different approach of how to kind of fix that situation.
Yes.
With the county clerks. Bill Request 101, it has 7 representatives that are sponsoring it. And it would exempt persons, officials, and institutions with religious objections to same-sex marriage. It would exempt them from any requirement to solemnize, issue, or record marriage licenses for those couples. So that's a little bit broader. It doesn't deal with just the solemnizing the marriages pastors and judges would deal with, but would deal with like the county clerk issue of, issuing those licenses and filing them.